What if I told you that on a freezing December night in 1987, Michael Jackson pulled into a gas station and encountered a homeless veteran who would change both of their lives forever? What happened next wasn't captured by cameras, wasn't reported by the media, and remained a closely guarded secret for over 2 decades. But here's the twist. This wasn't just about a single act of kindness. What Michael set in motion that night created a ripple effect that would save thousands of lives. This is the untold story that will restore your faith in humanity. It was December 21st, 1987, and snow was falling heavily on the streets of Detroit, Michigan. Michael Jackson had just finished a private recording session at Hitsville Studios when his black limousine pulled into a Shell gas station on 8 Mile Road. What happened next would become one of the most powerful untold stories of his life. The gas station attendant, Carlos Rodriguez, was working the night shift when he noticed the sleek black limousine glide up to pump number 2. He'd seen luxury cars before, but something about this one made him look twice. As he watched through the frost-covered window, a tall figure emerged from the back seat, someone wearing a black fedora and the signature face mask that had become Michael's trademark. But Michael wasn't alone at that gas station that night. Huddled near the entrance, trying to shield himself from the bitter Michigan wind, sat a homeless man named Frank Williams, a Vietnam War veteran who had been living on the streets for nearly 4 years. Frank's weathered hands clutched a piece of cardboard that simply read, "Hungry veteran. Please help. God bless." Most people walked past Frank without even acknowledging his presence. A few dropped loose change into his worn Detroit Tigers baseball cap. But when Michael Jackson stepped out of that limousine and saw Frank shivering in the cold, something extraordinary happened. Carlos Rodriguez later recalled, "I watched this man in the black hat walk straight over to the homeless guy. He didn't hesitate, didn't look around to see if anyone was watching. He just went right up to him and got down on one knee beside him on that freezing concrete." What happened next wasn't just a simple handout. Michael sat down next to Frank on the icy ground, completely ignoring his expensive black military-style jacket and the dirty pavement. For nearly 25 minutes, he listened to Frank's story, how he'd served 3 tours in Vietnam, how he'd struggled with nightmares and addiction when he returned, how his wife had left him and taken their children, how he'd lost his job at the Ford plant and eventually lost his home. Frank later described that conversation as the first time in years that someone had truly seen him as a human being. "This man in the hat and mask," Frank remembered, "he didn't just throw money at me and walk away. He asked me about my service, about my family, about my dreams. He made me feel like I mattered again." But Michael's response to Frank's story was unlike anything Carlos had ever witnessed in his 12 years working at gas stations. Instead of simply offering money, Michael pulled out a small notebook and made a phone call. Within 40 minutes, a taxi pulled up to the gas station. Michael had called the nearby Holiday Inn and paid for Frank to have a room for an entire month, including 3 meals a day. The taxi driver, Elena Vasquez, later revealed the extraordinary instructions she received. "This man in the black hat handed me $2,000 in cash and told me he'd already called the hotel. He said to make sure the veteran got a hot shower, clean clothes, and that the hotel staff treated him with complete respect and dignity." But the story doesn't end there. As Frank was about to leave in the taxi, Michael handed him something else, a sealed envelope. Frank kept that envelope's contents private for 20 years, until he finally shared it with a Detroit Free Press reporter in 2007. The handwritten note inside read, "Frank, your service to our country means everything. You deserve respect, comfort, and hope. This is just the beginning. You are not forgotten. A friend who believes in you." Carlos Rodriguez, who witnessed the entire encounter, knew he was watching something historic. "I'd worked the night shift for over a decade," he said. "I'd never seen anything like it. This wasn't just charity. This was one human being truly caring for another human being." What happened next would prove that Michael's compassion extended far beyond that single December night. The story of Michael Jackson and Frank Williams didn't end at that Shell station on 8 Mile Road. What unfolded over the following months reveals a side of Michael that the public never knew existed. A systematic, ongoing commitment to transforming one man's life that continued in complete secrecy. 4 days after their encounter, Frank was settling into his hotel room when there was a knock at his door. A social worker named Jennifer Martinez introduced herself, explaining that an anonymous benefactor had hired her to help Frank rebuild his life. What Frank didn't know was that Michael had personally researched and contacted the best rehabilitation services in Detroit to create a comprehensive support network specifically for him. Jennifer later revealed, "I received a call from someone who wanted to sponsor a veteran's complete rehabilitation. They didn't give me their name, but they had done incredible homework. They knew about job training programs, mental health services, and housing assistance programs that even I wasn't fully aware of. This person had connections and resources that opened doors I'd never seen open before." Within 3 weeks, Frank was enrolled in a welding certification program at Detroit Community College, a skill he'd learned in the military but hadn't used in over a decade. The entire program was paid for, including tools, protective equipment, and transportation vouchers. But Michael's involvement went much deeper than financial support. The program director, Robert Patterson, later shared an extraordinary detail. "We received weekly phone calls from someone asking about Frank's progress. This person wanted detailed updates, not just about his technical skills, but about his confidence level, his interactions with other students, his emotional well-being. They cared about every single aspect of his recovery process." By April 1988, Frank had completed his certification and was offered a full-time position at Morrison Steel Works, a local fabrication company. What he didn't know was that Michael had personally contacted the company owner and guaranteed Frank's salary for the first 8 months, ensuring he would have financial stability while proving himself as a reliable employee. But perhaps the most touching element of this secret support system was the monthly letters. Every month for 3 years, Frank received an envelope with no return address containing a handwritten letter of encouragement and a check for $600. The letters were signed simply, "Your friend who believes." But Frank recognized the distinctive handwriting from that original note at the gas station. One letter, dated September 12, 1988, read, "Frank, I heard you've been excelling in your welding program and helping other veterans who are struggling. Your strength is inspiring people who had lost all hope. Remember, every small victory creates bigger victories. Keep believing in yourself." Another letter from March 1989 said, "I know that rebuilding your life feels overwhelming sometimes. Remember that you've already conquered the hardest part. You chose to accept help, and you chose to help yourself. That takes extraordinary courage that most people never find." By December 1989, exactly 2 years after their gas station encounter, Frank had saved enough money to rent a 2-bedroom apartment in a safe neighborhood. He'd reconnected with his daughter in Ohio and had been promoted to lead welder at Morrison Steel Works. But the most remarkable transformation was in Frank himself. His co-workers described him as a natural mentor who went out of his way to help other veterans find employment. Frank had begun volunteering at the Detroit Mafway Medical Center, sharing his story and encouraging homeless veterans to seek help and accept assistance. Company owner David Morrison later revealed, "Frank never knew this, but that anonymous benefactor continued calling periodically just to check on his progress. Even after the formal support ended, this person wanted to know that Frank was not just surviving, but truly thriving. In my 40 years in business, I'd never encountered anything like it." The mystery of Michael's identity remained completely protected until Frank's unexpected death in 2007, when he left detailed instructions for his story to be shared with the world. But there was one more secret that wouldn't be revealed until much later. Frank Williams's transformation didn't happen in isolation. What Michael Jackson set in motion that December night in 1987 created a ripple effect that would eventually touch hundreds of lives over the following decades, revealing the true scope of Michael's secret humanitarian network that operated completely behind the scenes. By 1991, Frank had become something of a local hero in Detroit. His story of redemption, though no one knew about Michael's role in it, inspired the entire veteran community. But what people didn't realize was that Frank's transformation was just one piece of a much larger, carefully orchestrated network of compassion that Michael had been building in complete secrecy. Dr. Patricia Hernandez, who worked at the Detroit Veterans Administration Hospital, later revealed an astonishing pattern. Starting in early 1988, We began receiving substantial anonymous donations specifically designated for veteran mental health and rehabilitation services. These weren't random one-time gifts. They came monthly, always with detailed instructions about how the money should be used most effectively. The donations were always accompanied by handwritten notes with suggestions for new programs. One note proposed a peer mentoring system where successfully rehabilitated veterans could guide those just beginning their recovery journey. Another suggested partnerships with local manufacturing companies to guarantee job placement for program graduates. These weren't the suggestions of someone simply writing checks. Dr. Hernandez explained, this was someone deeply invested in creating systematic, long-term change. Meanwhile, Frank had unknowingly become the blueprint for what would later be called the Motor City program. Using his remarkable success as a template, social worker Jennifer Martinez began developing a comprehensive rehabilitation system for homeless veterans throughout Michigan. What she didn't know was that her anonymous benefactor had been carefully studying Frank's entire journey to create a replicable program that could help veterans across the country. By 1993, the Motor City program was helping over 70 veterans annually. Each participant received the same comprehensive support that Frank had experienced: temporary housing, job training, mental health counseling, and ongoing mentorship. The program's success rate was unprecedented. 91% of participants found stable housing and employment within 8 months. Detroit Free Press investigative reporter Sandra Chen looked into the program's funding in 1994 and discovered something remarkable. Every successful veteran in the Motor City program had a strikingly similar story. They'd all received the same type of anonymous support: monthly encouragement letters, unexpected job opportunities, and connections to resources they never knew existed. It was like someone had created an invisible safety net throughout the entire community, Chen reported. The level of coordination and care was unlike anything we'd ever documented. But the ripple effect extended far beyond Detroit, Michigan. Veterans who had been helped by the Motor City program began establishing similar initiatives in other cities. David Morrison, the steel company owner who had hired Frank, started offering guaranteed employment to veterans in Grand Rapids, Flint, and Lansing. Social worker Jennifer Martinez became a nationally recognized expert in veteran rehabilitation, speaking at conferences across the country about the Detroit model. By 1996, variations of the Motor City program were operating in 18 states. Thousands of homeless veterans had been helped, but few knew the true origin of their salvation. The anonymous benefactor's identity remained completely protected, but their influence had spread across the entire nation. Frank himself became a powerful advocate for veteran services. He spoke at high schools about military service, worked with local politicians to improve veteran benefits, and personally mentored over 300 veterans during his lifetime. When asked about his own incredible transformation, he would always credit a guardian angel who showed me that people still care about those who served our country. In 2001, Frank established the Guardian Angel Foundation, using his own savings and community donations to continue helping homeless veterans. He never knew that his mysterious benefactor had been quietly monitoring his foundation's work and had secretly helped secure major corporate sponsorships that kept the organization thriving. The foundation's mission statement, written personally by Frank, read, "Sometimes all it takes is one person believing in you to change your entire life. Our job is to be that person for someone else who has lost hope." By 2007, when Frank passed away peacefully in his own home surrounded by family and friends, the Motor City program and its variations had helped over 15,000 veterans nationwide. His funeral was attended by hundreds of people whose lives had been touched by the ripple effect that started with one act of kindness at a Detroit gas station. But Frank took one final secret with him to the grave. 20 years after that fateful night at the Shell station, the truth about Michael Jackson's secret humanitarian network would finally come to light in the most unexpected way, revealing a legacy of compassion that rivaled even his musical achievements. In 2007, just months before Michael's death, Frank Williams was diagnosed with terminal liver cancer. As he prepared for the end of his life, he made a decision that would shock the world. He decided to reveal the identity of his guardian angel and the full scope of what that encounter had created. Frank's final letter, published in the Detroit Free Press after his death, began. For 20 years, I've kept a promise to never reveal who saved my life that December night in 1987. But now that I'm dying, I believe the world needs to know what Michael Jackson really did when nobody was watching. The letter continued. People think they knew Michael Jackson. They knew his music, his dancing, his controversies. But they didn't know that he spent millions of dollars secretly helping thousands of people. The man who stopped at that gas station didn't just change my life. He created a system that's been helping people for over 20 years. Frank's revelation prompted an extensive investigation by journalist Maria Santos, who spent 8 months uncovering the full scope of Michael's secret charitable network. What she discovered was staggering in its scope and sophistication. Bank records obtained through Freedom of Information requests after Michael's death revealed that between 1987 and 2009, Michael had quietly donated over $52 million to veteran services, homeless shelters, and rehabilitation programs across the United States. These donations were made through a complex network of anonymous trusts and foundations that kept Michael's involvement completely hidden. Dr. Patricia Hernandez from the Detroit Forum finally understood the pattern she'd observed for decades. When we put together all the anonymous donations, the strategic suggestions, the connections to resources, it became clear that one person had been orchestrating a nationwide support system for homeless veterans. The level of coordination and compassion was unlike anything we'd ever seen. But perhaps the most remarkable discovery was a series of private journals that Michael had kept documenting his secret humanitarian work. In one entry from 1991, he wrote, "Frank doesn't know that I still check on him regularly. Seeing him help other veterans fills my heart more than any Grammy Award ever could. This is why God gave me success, not just to entertain people, but to lift up those who have been forgotten by society." Another entry from 1998 read, "The Motor City program is now working in 18 states. Every veteran who finds hope through this program is connected to that night when I met Frank. I may never be able to fix my own public image, but at least I can fix some of the broken parts of the world." The investigation revealed that Michael had personally approved every major decision in the Motor City program's expansion. He had reviewed applications for assistance, suggested program improvements, and even attended some graduation ceremonies in complete disguise. His commitment wasn't just financial, it was deeply personal. Perhaps most touching was Michael's final journal entry about Frank, written in 2008. Frank called the foundation office today to report that they've helped their 600th veteran find permanent housing. He doesn't know I still listen to these progress reports. His voice was so proud, so fulfilled. That man who was shivering outside a gas station 21 years ago is now a pillar of his community. This is my greatest hit. When Michael Jackson died in June 2009, the Detroit Free Press ran Frank's letter as their front page story. The headline read, "The King of Pop's Greatest Performance, A Life Saved, and Thousands More." Within days, veteran organizations across the country were sharing similar stories of anonymous help that they now realized had come from Michael Jackson. Frank Williams died 4 months before Michael, never knowing that his guardian angel would follow him so soon. But the system they had created together continues today, still helping homeless veterans find hope, housing, and dignity. The Motor City program, now officially renamed the Williams Jackson Foundation, operates in 32 states and has helped over 25,000 veterans since that snowy night in 1987. Sometimes the greatest performances happen when no one is watching. Sometimes a single moment of compassion can echo through decades. And sometimes the most important legacy isn't the music that made the world dance. It's the lives that were saved when nobody was looking. Michael Jackson stopped at a gas station on December 21st, 1987. What he did there created a miracle that's still saving lives today.